Daniel Rahman understood something was wrong before he even opened the email. The office felt different that morning. Conversation stopped when he walked past desks. People who usually greeted him avoided eye contact, suddenly focused on screens. That clearly held nothing urgent. The air carried a quiet tension, like a storm waiting just beyond the windows. Daniel ignored it at first. It had deadlines, meetings, and numbers to review. 15 years of discipline had trained him to focus on work, not rumors. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and opened his laptop, expecting another routine day, leading a company he had helped build from nothing. The message appeared at the top of his inbox, marked urgent. It came from Human Resources, copied to Senior Management. Daniel frowned. HR never contacted him directly unless it involved company policy updates or hiring approvals. He clicked it casually, still sipping his coffee. Halfway through the first sentence, the cup froze in his hand. The company was terminating his role as financial director effective immediately due to suspected financial misconduct. Access to all systems would be revoked. An internal investigation was underway. He was instructed to cooperate fully and leave the premises within the hour. Daniel blinked slowly, certain he misunderstood. He reread the email carefully. Each word heavier than the last. Misconduct, investigation, immediate removal. His heartbeat grew loud in his ears. Numbers and policies filled his mind as he searched for logic. He knew every account, every transaction, every audit record. Nothing illegal existed. Nothing even questionable. Before he could respond, his computer screen locked itself. Files disappeared. Access denied, messages replaced familiar folders. The company network had already shut him out. A knock came at his office door. 2 security staff stood outside, polite but firm. Behind them, the HR manager avoided looking directly at him. "Daniel," she said quietly, "we need you to come with us." The walk through the office felt unreal. Employees pretended to work while secretly watching. Some looked shocked, others curious. A few whispered. Daniel wanted to explain, to defend himself, but no one asked questions. The decision had already been made. Outside the building, rain began falling, thin and cold. The glass doors closed behind him with a soft sound that felt final. He stood there for several minutes, holding a box containing personal items collected by someone else, framed photos, notebooks, a coffee mug gifted by the team years ago. When the company reached its first major milestone, 15 years reduced to a cardboard box, Daniel drove home slowly, replaying every financial decision he had made. He checked memories like a ledger, searching for mistakes. Nothing explained this. The company audits had always been clean. Investors trusted him more than anyone else. At home, his wife noticed his silence immediately. He told her only part of the truth, unable yet to say the word misconduct aloud. Saying it made it feel real. That evening, news articles began appearing online. Senior executive removed amid financial concerns. His name followed shortly after. The articles used careful language, but the implication was clear. Readers did not wait for investigations. Public opinion moved faster than facts. Messages flooded his phone. Some friends asked what happened. Others offered cautious support. A few simply disappeared. By midnight, calls stopped entirely, replaced by silence that felt heavier than accusations. Daniel waited for one call in particular. Omar Malik, his partner, his closest friend. Omar had recruited him 15 years earlier when Malik Consulting was only an idea shared over cheap coffee and impossible dreams. Omar handled vision and growth. Daniel managed finances and stability. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, at least. Daniel had believed, so Omar did not call that night. Or the next day, Daniel tried contacting him but received brief responses. "Busy with investors dealing with the situation. We'll talk soon." The messages felt formal, unlike the brotherly tone they once shared. 3 days passed before Daniel realized something deeper was wrong. His former colleague named Sarah contacted him quietly. She insisted on meeting somewhere private. Her voice carried nervous urgency. They met at a small cafe far from the business district. Sarah looked around twice before sitting down. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table, "but you need to see it." Daniel plugged it into his laptop later that evening. Files opened one by one: internal transaction logs, authorization histories, altered timestamps. At first, he struggled to understand what he was seeing. Then the pattern appeared. Financial decisions had been reassigned to his credentials after being approved elsewhere. Access permissions changed weeks earlier without his knowledge. Transactions moved between accounts in ways that created the appearance of poor oversight. Someone had carefully rewritten responsibility, and every administrative override traced back to Omar's executive authorization. Daniel stared at the screen long after midnight. Shock held him still. His mind resisted the conclusion, searching desperately for another explanation. Maybe Omar had delegated access. Maybe someone hacked the system. But the evidence formed a clear story. Omar had prepared this step by step, quietly. Memories rushed back with painful clarity. Omar insisting on new investors, pushing aggressive expansion plans Daniel considered risky. Their last argument replayed in Daniel's mind. He had refused to approve financial strategies he believed could harm employees if markets shifted. Omar had smiled then, saying they would revisit the discussion later. Instead, he removed the obstacle. Daniel closed the laptop slowly. The betrayal did not arrive as anger at first. It arrived as emptiness. 15 years of trust suddenly felt fragile, like something imagined rather than lived. He walked through his home, touching familiar objects without noticing them. Every shared memory now carried doubt. Had Omar planned this for months? Had their friendship ever been real or simply useful? The next morning brought another blow. Investors publicly supported Omar's leadership, praising his decisive action during a difficult situation. The company's stock rose slightly. Stability reassured the market. Daniel understood then his removal had not been chaos. It had been strategy. Without him, Omar gained full control. Humiliation followed anger. Daniel avoided leaving home, aware that neighbors might recognize his name from news headlines. Online comments judged him without evidence. Some defended him, but most assumed guilt. The internet preferred simple stories. Days blended together. Sleep came rarely. Each time Daniel closed his eyes, he imagined conversations he wished he had with Omar, demanding answers, asking why loyalty meant so little. One afternoon, he opened an old company presentation from their early years. The slides showed their first office, a cramped rented space with peeling paint and borrowed furniture. Omar stood beside him in a photo, smiling with exhausted pride. They had promised each other success would never change who they were. Daniel laughed quietly at the memory, not because it was funny, but because it felt distant, belonging to strangers. Anger finally arrived then, sharp and clear. He realized Omar had not only taken his job, he had taken his reputation, the one thing Daniel valued more than money. Years of careful honesty erased by a single accusation crafted to look believable for the first time. Daniel imagined fighting back. He reviewed the files again, this time not as a victim searching for answers, but as an accountant analyzing leverage. The evidence could expose everything. One disclosure could trigger investigations that would shake the company's foundation. The thought frightened him and comforted him. Revenge began quietly, disguised as justice. He told himself he only wanted truth revealed. Yet, deep inside, another voice wanted Omar to feel the same isolation, the same helplessness. Daniel sat by the window as evening fell, watching rain streak down the glass just as it had the day he was escorted out. The world outside moved normally. Cars passing, people laughing, life continuing without pause. Inside, something had changed permanently. Trust no longer felt simple. Friendship no longer felt safe. He realized betrayal hurt most not because of loss, but because it rewrote the past. Every kind memory now carried hidden meaning. As darkness settled, Daniel made a quiet decision. He would not remain the man everyone believed he was. He would uncover the truth behind what happened, no matter where it led. And somewhere beneath the pain, a new emotion took shape. Not loud, not reckless, but steady and growing. The desire to reclaim his life. The desire to make the one person who betrayed him face the consequences of that choice. The desire for revenge had begun. Even if Daniel was not yet ready to admit it. Daniel stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Weeks passed after the betrayal, and silence settled into his life like dust covering forgotten furniture. Each morning he woke early out of habit, only to remember he had nowhere to go. The routine he once relied on vanished, replaced by long hours filled with thoughts he could not escape. His reputation remained damaged, and every job application ended the same way. Polite interest followed by rejection once employers searched his name online. He understood then that clearing his name would not happen quickly. Justice came at all, he would have to create it himself. He began studying the files Sarah had given him with careful focus. Daniel approached them the way he always handled. Numbers calmly, logically, without emotion. He mapped timelines, tracked digital signatures, and compared financial movements across months. Patterns appeared clearly now. Omar had not acted suddenly. The plan had unfolded slowly, preparing investors while shifting risk onto Daniel's department. Every change looked small alone, but together they formed a deliberate path toward removing him. At first, Daniel told himself he only wanted proof of innocence. But as nights grew longer, another motive strengthened. He imagined Omar sitting comfortably in the office that once belonged to both of them, speaking confidently about leadership and integrity. The image burned inside him. Revenge began shaping his thoughts before he noticed it. He created a folder labeled Correction. Inside, he placed evidence showing how accounts were altered and how executive permissions bypassed normal controls. Each discovery felt like reclaiming a piece of proof. Himself. For the first time since losing his job, he felt powerful again. Still, doubt followed him everywhere. One evening, his daughter Lena visited. She found papers spread across the dining table, charts drawn by hand, timelines connected with notes. Daniel looked different to her, focused but distant. "You're working harder now than when you had the job," she said gently. "I'm fixing a lie," he replied. She studied him quietly. "And when it's fixed, will you feel better?" The question caught him off guard. He wanted to say yes, but the answer refused to come easily. Lena continued, "You always told me that anger makes people forget who they are." After she left, Daniel sat alone staring at the evidence. He realized revenge required constant energy. Every hour spent planning kept him tied to Omar. The betrayal controlled his thoughts even in absence. Meanwhile, across the city, Omar faced pressures Daniel once handled. Investors demanded faster growth. Financial risks grew harder to manage without Daniel's cautious oversight. Omar worked late nights convincing himself the decision had been necessary. He told others Daniel lacked vision, but deep down he remembered every conversation where Daniel warned against moving too fast. Success felt heavier than expected. Omar sometimes opened old messages between them, rereading jokes and late night discussions about building something honest. He never replied. Pride prevented it, and fear followed close behind. Admitting guilt would mean admitting he betrayed more than a partner. He betrayed a friend who trusted him completely. Daniel knew nothing of Omar's struggle. From his perspective, Omar had won easily. That belief fueled his determination. He drafted an anonymous report exposing financial manipulation. The language remained professional, supported by undeniable data. Once released, regulators would investigate, investors would panic, and Omar's reputation would collapse just as his had. The plan was simple, precise, and devastating. Each day, Daniel moved closer to sending it. Yet every step forced him to confront a question he avoided. Was he seeking justice or punishment? He remembered the early years when he and Omar worked late nights sharing cheap meals, celebrating small victories. Those memories clashed painfully with present anger. Revenge demanded he erase those moments entirely, turning Omar into nothing more than an enemy. But reality felt more complicated. Omar had not acted out of hatred. He acted out of ambition and fear of failure. That realization did not excuse the betrayal, but it unsettled Daniel's certainty. If Omar believed his actions saved the company, then both men saw themselves as right. The thought disturbed him. Revenge suddenly felt less like balance and more like continuation of the same mistake, choosing victory over understanding. Still, Daniel kept preparing. He organized evidence into one final document, polished and ready. Late one night, he opened his laptop, emailed draft waiting. The subject line remained blank. His finger hovered above the keyboard as his heart raced. He imagined headlines, clearing his name and destroying Omar's career. He imagined satisfaction washing away humiliation. Instead, he felt tired, not weak, just exhausted from carrying anger every day. He realized revenge would not restore lost trust or erase public judgment overnight. It would only create another fall, another story of betrayal, another cycle of blame. Yet walking away felt impossible to Dot. Daniel closed the laptop without sending the email. But he did not delete it either. The decision remained unfinished, hanging between justice and mercy, for the first time since the betrayal. He understood the real battle was not against Omar. It was against the version of himself shaped by anger, the man he might become if revenge became the only thing guiding him forward.